So when you're matching your graphs, the first thing you have to remember is the 3 different forms that we went over. So the first form that we did was actually this one. It's when there's no parentheses whatsoever, and your vertex is used finding negative b over 2a. So this one gives you the vertex using this formula. The other graph we went over was this one with the one set of parentheses, and that was the one where the vertex was the hk. And then the third one we went over was there 2 sets of parentheses, and your x-intercepts actually came from those numbers. And then a few other things. Remember, if a was less than 0, it opens down. If a was greater than 0, it opens up, which is the front number for all of these. So when you go to look at these, I'm just going to tell you what I would do, and then you can take it from there. So for instance, the first one here, if you notice it's in that HK form, so my vertex is -2, -5, which would be B. And then maybe, like, because this is HK. Or the other thing you could have said is, that's option 1. The other thing you could have said is these 2 were both negative, so both of these are opening down. So this is the only one that was opening up. So you could have said something about only one opening upwards, however you want to phrase it. But this was the only positive A, so then that one had to be with that graph because this one's opening up. For the second one, I would probably do something with my vertex again. So my vertex was negative b over 2a. So 0 over 2a, which is 0. So I know my vertex is at 0, 1. So then that has to be C. And then the last one, I would say that your x-intercepts are at 3 and 2. So if you look up here, the x-intercepts are at 3 and 2. So there's lots of things you can phrase. But some answers we were not taking was that this had a 5 and that had a 5. This had a 1 and that had a 1. I know what you're doing, but if you're not telling me that it's because 2, 5 is the vertex, it's not going to count. Or, for instance, some of you say, like, 3 and 2, I saw 3 and 2 on this graph. You have to tell me that the 3 and the 2 are the x-intercepts. You can't just tell me that the numbers match the numbers on the graph. You have to tell me what those numbers are and what they represent. For the word problem, I told you that the formula was negative b over 2a. So they want to know if you jump off a bridge, what is the maximum height he reaches? So remember, this is A, B, C. So negative b, which is 20, over 2 times a, which is negative 2, equals 5. So the height that he got was 5 feet. Is it feet? Yeah, 5 feet. And then the one on the test also asked you another question, this one didn't, but say it said, how long was he in the air for? You would take what you found and you would just plug it back in. So the one on the test wanted you to also plug it back in to figure out the next part. So if you took it and plugged it back in, (201). I didn't ask you for this number, but on the test they did. So on the test, you do the negative b over 2a, and then you have to find the second answer, you have to plug it in. All right, so for factoring, on the test and the retake, I tell you to solve all of them, so you would have to solve them. But I just threw this extra practice up here just to get you used to factoring. But just be careful when you're going to solve. So when you're factoring, if it's a trinomial, so 3, always check to see if there's a GCF. So this one doesn't have a GCF. And then you're trying to figure out what multiplies to 63 and adds to 16. So I made a list here of everything that multiplies to 63 that I can think of. And I want the pair that could get me to 16, which would be 9 and 7. Okay, and make sure you know what's negative and what's positive. So I got to get to negative 16. So it'd be minus 9, minus 7. So for number 6, multiply to 18. So what multiplies to 18? 9 and 2, 18 and 1, 6 and 3. And it has to add to negative 7. So it would be 9 and 2. So to get to negative 7, I would want to do minus 9 plus 2. So when I add these two numbers together, I should get the middle term. And when I multiply these two numbers together, I should get the back term. For number 7, first start out with the GCF. So if your front term is not 1, you have a GCF. So I'm going to factor out a GCF, which is dividing all of this. Once you factor it out, now we're going to do what we did over here. So what multiplies to 14 and adds to 5? So 7 and 2. So to get to negative 5, I'd have to do minus 7 plus 2. Once again, these should multiply to 14 and they should add to negative 5. For number 8, this is just a GCF problem. If it's a binomial, check for a GCF. So the GCF of 21 and 28, 7. So this will become 3x plus 4. If it's not a trinomial, that's it. You just factor out a GCF, you're done. For number 9, I have a GCF, so 3. And then once I pull the GCF out, this is that difference of squares formula, difference of squares. So for difference of squares, it is square root, plus, minus. So x plus 2, x minus 2. For the last one, factor out a 4. And then what multiplies to 10 adds to 8. Let's see, so 5 and 2, 10 and 1. It looks like nothing multiplies to 5, multiplies to 10 and adds to 8. So then that would be it. This would be that's as far as you could go. You can't factor any farther. And then the factoring to solve, you're going to factor like you normally would. So minus 5, minus 3. So factor like we did up top. And then you're just setting them equal to 0 and solving. So this would be x equals 5, x equals 3.